probably a year ago, we were sitting in our program committee meeting that meets quarterly, coming up with fun, creative programs for our lunches. And somebody mentioned seeing an article in one of the magazines about this Ohio roller girls team that had just won the championship. And I thought, I'd like to think I'm pretty aware of what's going on in town, and I had no idea that we had this team. So I agreed to set out and find out what was going on. And that's when I met Theresa Harold here, also known as Bratislava Bruiser. And she's the president of the group and told me all about their successes. I just learned today that they haven't had a home loss in about 7 years. So if you're looking for a team to go and support with a pretty good chance of winning, it's the Ohio Roller Girls. They play their home games at the fairgrounds up near there, so pretty centrally located. The Ohio, roller derby in general has gained popularity in this new format called Fast Track since 2001 because it requires speed, strategy, and athleticism. So the rapid growth of the sport is due in part because of the ease of setting up a flat track. It can be done on any surface that is suitable for skating, such as skating rinks, basketball courts, parking lots, and even airplane hangars. My hope was that we'd have, I'd say, here they are, and they'd all come barreling through the doors. But I guess skating on carpet is somewhat challenging, so that wasn't going to work out. But anyway, I can't wait to hear all about today's program. Normally, I end my comments with "Help me welcome our speaker's name," but I think today we should do something a little different. I think we should do a chant like we're at an event. So join me. Bruiser, 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 bruiser.
Thank you. All right, well, that is different than what I had expected. But it's good. I appreciate you making me feel welcome. I'm very happy to be here today. I know when I spoke to Mike, I think, as he said, he was hoping for something very flashy, maybe some kind of, big entrance. But like I said, the carpet isn't really conducive to that. And maybe just me talking to you about my favorite sport for the next 20 minutes will hopefully be interesting to you, and you'll still find that to be kind of fun. I do have some slides up there. If you look the way that it's set up, that is actually the dimensions of our track. So as Mike mentioned, it's a flat track, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So what I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about myself, because you might be wondering what kind of person gets involved in this. A little bit about how the resurgence of flat track roller derby happened, and then a little bit more about how the game's played in our league. So Mike also did want to try to get President Tricia to get skates on, but that is also not happening as well. But this is a real luxury for me to have an extended period of time to be able to talk to people about roller derby. Most of the time I have about 30 seconds because it's some person on the street who, sees maybe you're wearing a logo, so you have to give that brief elevator speech. So I'll try to keep it slow because I'm used to trying to talk fast so I can get all that information out. So first of all, as they said, I'm Theresa Harold, also known as Bratislava Bruiser. People call me Bruiser for short, so I will answer to that just the same as I answer to Theresa. I grew up in Akron. I went to college in Marietta. I moved here to Columbus in 2003 for graduate school. After that, I started my career. I work actually in the state legislature, and at the time, I had a coworker who played. So a friend of mine and I went to sort of check it out, see what it was all about, and she suggested that maybe we try out. And I thought, well, I'm not a roller skater. I did grow up playing sports. I played soccer in high school. I played club rugby, so I was already kind of used to playing. I like contact sports, so I thought, hey, let's give this a try. Let's see if I can roller skate. I couldn't roller skate very well. I'll let you know. So I had to work pretty hard to be able to, get. So actually, if you look on the photographs here, the far left-hand side, that is a picture of me in action. So I'm covering my face up, but that's me and some of my other fellow skaters. So I started playing in October of 2007. That was the third season for Ohio Roller Derby. At that time, it was a little bit different, and it was a little bit easier. As I said, I wasn't that great of a skater. Now it's a little bit harder to actually make it into the league. But I like to hit people, and I liked the challenge that it brought me, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Beyond skating with the league, I also have played a number of roles. As they mentioned, I am the president of the league this year. I have been a board member, a member of the league finance. I've played the part of the captain several different times. I've served on our training body to help train. I've actually spent time coaching. So I've done a number of different roles, and I'll do anything pretty much to help out the league and to move forward our sport. Currently, I am sad to say I'm not actually playing at this time. I injured myself at the end of last year, had surgery on my shoulder. I was gonna give you guys like maybe a gnarly photo of my clavicle protruding out, but I decided since you're eating lunch that I wouldn't do so. So I had surgery a few months ago, so I'm still kind of healing from that. So when you do come to our bouts, you're not gonna see me playing at this point in time. All right, so enough about me. That's probably not really what you wanna hear about. How did this all start? So where did this come from? To start really at the beginning, back in the 1920s is where the term roller derby really came about. And at that point, it was a lot different than what modern day roller derby looks like. It was actually more just a race on skates. In the 40s, it started to evolve a little more into what is closer to what we do, which is a little more of a shoving match with points scored, which I'll get a little bit more into that. And then by the 60s, it was televised. And it went through about 1973 is when they stopped televising it again, and then some of you may remember back in the 80s and 90s, there were some very interesting versions of roller derby that they were televising again, adding all kinds of strange things like alligator pits and stuff like that. But that's not what we do. We are a little bit different than that. So I'll get into some of the differences between what you might think of as far as what you remember or have heard about roller derby versus what we really are. So the resurgence of roller derby with what it looks like today started in the early 2000s, around 2004 in Austin, Texas, with what is currently the Texas Roller Girls. They sort of started this, as Mike said, it's a lot easier now because we aren't bank track. So bank track is what you probably think of when you think of old roller derby. This is on a flat track, as I said, so those are the dimensions of it. So it changes the way the sport is played a little bit, but it also makes it a lot easier for people to play because you don't have to have that track and have to build that and have that available to you. So in Texas, then they formed what is now known as the Women's Flat Track Derby Association, which is our governing body. WFTDA, the Women's Flat Track Derby Association, is a nonprofit. It's our governing body. It's all DIY for the skaters, by the skaters, and the members. We currently have 369 leagues that are members of the WFTDA. So that's probably a little bit larger than you may have thought. This is global, around the world. There are teams in Europe, there's Asia, Australia, South America, all over the world, not just here in North America. And they're all governed by this body. There are 76 apprentice leagues. There is a process that you have to go through in order to become a member of the WFTDA. What the WFTDA provides for us is it organizes the playoff tournaments, which I'll talk a little bit more about. We've developed relationships with ESPN, who has started playing our championship tournaments on ESPN3. They help develop the rules because since this is still kind of a newer sport, we still are constantly evolving and changing as we discover new things about the gameplay. They sanction our games, so all the games that are played for rankings have to be sanctioned through their sanctioning body. They certify our referees that we use, so there's a process for that as well. Actually, the vice president of the WFTDA is a member of Ohio Roller Derby as well. So the WFTDA does actually have a few paid employees, which is different than how Ohio Roller Derby works. They have an extensive insurance program, which is how all of the member leagues are insured through them. And in addition to just being women's, we've now begun to expand as far as there are also a lot of junior leagues popping up. There are 2 in the local area, none of which are affiliated with the Ohio Roller Derby, but there are 2 leagues for juniors, and there's also a lot of men's derby that is now starting. So a lot of the men started at first because they would be referees, and then they thought they were really missing out on the fun, so they wanted to play as well. Ohio Roller Derby. How did we begin? We began as Ohio Roller Girls in 2006, and we were actually one of the original members of the WFTDA. We, unlike the WFTA, which is a nonprofit, we are actually an LLC. We were founded by Melissa Wallace, whose derby name was Scarlette Fury, and she just sort of decided that, passing flyers out, word of mouth, getting people to come meet and see if anyone was interested, and basically if you had a pulse and walked into the room, you could join the league at that point in time. But we were the first league here in Ohio. There are a number of leagues that have it's expanded exponentially. So there are leagues in Cincinnati, Dayton, Mount Vernon. There's 2 in Akron, Cleveland, Toledo. So all over the state there are a lot of other leagues. We do still have a lot of players who, because we are the highest ranked team, the most competitive in the state right now, who will drive from several hours away to come play with our team as well. We did recently change our name to Ohio Roller Derby, which you may have noticed. It was previously Ohio Roller Girls, but as grown women, first of all, we don't necessarily like being called girls. But it's also more inclusive of what our league actually is. So it's not just about the skaters. We have referees who are involved in the league. We have non-skating officials who perform a lot of other duties as well within the league, and we want to be more inclusive of them. And as well, it's also a great way it's a better marketing tool, because then you actually have a better sense of what we are instead of just Ohio Roller Girls, but Ohio Roller Derby. So the way our league is structured is we have it's kind of like a JV varsity structure. So we do have 2 teams. In the first 3 seasons of the league, we had an intra-league play. So we had home teams, we would play ourselves. We restructured in order to be a little bit more competitive on an international scale. And so now we have the 2 competitive teams who only play teams outside of our league. One plays for rankings, so they play sanctioned games for our international rankings. We are currently in the top 30 team. And our record this year is 6-1. So I did check on that. So then the B team is more of our kind of feeder team. So it's our JV. So the way that we train is we have on-skate skills practices. We do a lot of cross-training off-skate practices. We watch video. We have as I mentioned before, we have a training body who develops all of these kind of practices and the strategies that we use going forward. We'd also do skills testing of our members. We have rules testing for our members. And this year it's been a little bit more challenging because for the last 5 years we were lucky enough to have secured a dedicated practice facility for ourselves. Unfortunately, the warehouse complex we were in got sold off, and so we're still kind of homeless right now, but we're still practicing as much as we can. But hopefully we'll find a suitable replacement soon. So how does one become a roller girl or know that they even want to do that? Some people think that it's crazy, but as I said before, early on, it was very easy to do. You just kind of showed up, put some skates on, and you were ready to go. Now the pipeline is a little bit different. We have a lot of different avenues for folks to come in. We do provide wannabe clinics for people who are just interested in coming out to the skate rink, trying it out, seeing how it feels, have some moves with a little bit of instruction. And we also have a recreation league for people who maybe aren't really sure or want to learn a little bit before they actually start playing. And then we do have a tryouts process that usually lasts 2 days in order for people to be selected for the league. People devote a lot of time and effort to this sport, myself included, for a very long time. It's a big commitment, but it's definitely worth it. And we're always we welcome people who are not wanting to play, but who want to help out in any way as well. So in addition, as I'm at the Rotary Club, part of our mission includes having a good community presence. So we do things like highway cleanup. We work a lot of events when people ask us to help out with them. We speak at schools and at events like this. So we try to get involved in the community as much as we have. Okay, so I've given you all this information, and you're like, that's really great and nice, but you still don't probably even know how we play this game. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So again, there's another picture of me up on the top there that's under pivot. So that's me in action. So again, it's paid on flat track with quad skates. So you have to wear the quad skates. There's equipment that you need to wear that's required. So you have to wear a helmet, mouth guard, elbow pads, wrist guard, knee pads. You can wear people wear other protective gear, but those are the ones that are actually required of you. On the track at one time, there will be 5 players from each team. 4 are blockers, 1 is a jammer. So the goal is, as most sports, to score more points than your opponent. The only person on the track who can score a point is the jammer. The jammer is the player who has a helmet cover that has a star on it. So what happens is each round of play can last up to 2 minutes, but they usually are a little bit shorter than that. Whistle blows. Once the action starts, the jammers are trying to work their way through the pack. So the blockers are playing offense and defense at the same time. They're trying to assist their jammer through the pack while also prohibiting the opposing jammer from getting through the pack. There are legal and illegal ways that you can do that. So to keep it simple, legal is anything hitting from shoulder to above the knee. So So if you hit somebody in the head or take out their legs, that's going to get you sent to the penalty box. You're also not allowed to shove someone directly into the back. There are a lot of other penalties that are involved, but those are sort of the most basics as far as what you can legally do. Otherwise, you'll spend 30 seconds in the penalty box. So the first jammer to get out of that whole scrum pack becomes designated lead jammer, and that gives them a strategic advantage. So that means that they are eligible to end that jam, that round of play, whenever they want to. The reason that's an advantage is if they come around, they start scoring points that next pass. They score 1 point per opposing player that they pass. So if that jammer comes through, scores 4 points, and they see the opponent coming, they may stop that round of play, which they do by tapping their hips so that the other opponent cannot score any points. So that is a strategic advantage to having the lead jammer. So we also have 7 referees on the track at one time. Safety is very important. The game moves quickly. It's hard to see everything, so we have a lot of referees to keep an eye on everyone. Each jammer actually has their own ref because they keep track of the score as they go through. So that might still not be very clear to you. So I have a short video that's going to go a little bit over what I just talked about.
The basics of flat track roller derby, brought to you by Antic Skate Boots and the Women's Flat Track Derby Association. The game of roller derby is played on roller skates. The players wear helmets, elbow pads, wrist guards, and knee pads. The track is flat, not banked. Each 30-minute half is broken down into shifts called jams. The group of 8 players at the front is called the pack. The pack is made of players who play the position of blocker. Behind the pack are the jammers. The jammers are the skaters who score points and are marked by a large star on their helmet. When the whistle blows, the jammers try to skate their way through the pack and out the other side, but they will be met with the hips, rear, and shoulders of the opposing team's blockers. When 2 bodies make contact on the track, this is called a block. Once the jammers have skated their way through the pack the first time, they're ready to begin scoring. They earn a point every time they legally pass a member of the opposing team. The team with the most points at the end of the game wins. The jammers will fail to earn points if they pass the opposing blockers illegally. Any player who performs an illegal action will earn a penalty. So what's illegal? Elbows, tripping, back blocking, and passing out of bounds. Any player who receives a major penalty has earned a 30-second trip to the penalty box. The jam ends when the lead jammer places her hands on her hips, or when 2 minutes has elapsed. 30 seconds later, a new jam begins, and the whole thing starts again.
So hopefully that helped make it a little bit more clear than maybe my explanation. So now I think you have a little understanding about where we came from, who we are, and how the game is played, and a little bit more just about how this works. I'd mentioned that we are an internationally competitive team. It's an internationally competitive sport. It still is an amateur sport, but we do play at the highest level that is available to us now. We have evolved over the year as far as how rankings work. Currently, as I mentioned, there's close to 400 teams, so not all of them are in that competitive bracket. There is a Division I and a Division II bracket. So Division I is the top 40 teams, and they go into 4 playoffs, and the top 3 from each go to a championship. And then there's Division II, which is the next 20 teams. So essentially, the first 60 teams get to play in the playoff structure. We used to have a regional-based structure. But it sort of evolved from there, and now we use a extensive rankings calculator, which calculates opponent strength, points scored, et cetera, in order to develop the ranking, because it used to be based on more of a kind of a voting process with members, which was a little bit of an interesting prospect. So we've been evolving, and based on the rankings, it's an S-curve seeding, which is how the people are chosen for the playoffs that they play in. And it's a tool we use when we're scheduling games to try to figure out which opponents are most beneficial for us to play. So actually, back in 2007, the Ohio Roller Girls hosted one of the very first tournaments, which was Heartland Havoc here in Columbus. So as I said, we have been around on the ground level of the formation of the WFTDA. As well, we have hosted WFTDA, which is a big convention that we have every year where members from many of the leagues come together to share information, to make decisions and things like that. And this year it is in Madison, Wisconsin. So you may have never even heard about us, right? And yet we've been around. This is our 11th season here in Columbus. Yet there still are a lot of people who haven't heard about us. I think, probably when you saw me walk up here, I may not be what you had expected when you heard that Bruiser was going to be coming to speak to you. And I've definitely heard you look too nice to do that. But I tell you what, on the track, I am not nice. But the point is that there really isn't a typical roller girl. I think people have an idea of what that kind of person looks like or who they are. As I said, I've worked in state government for 10 years. We have people who are chemists, biologists, professors, accountants. We have one of our players is currently finishing up dental school, which is convenient because she can make us custom mouth guards. But, we have a variety of people, and it's not just our league, it's, this global phenomenon. We have people with a variety of backgrounds beyond that as far as athletics. Some people like me had played sports growing up, but maybe weren't roller skaters. There are other people who have absolutely no sports experience. We have people who were hockey players, speed skaters, figure skaters. Some people who were just rink rats who decided that this is the first time they wanted to actually try to play a sport. So we have a lot of different backgrounds, and we all sort of come together in this really interesting, unique scenario. So back to what we were talking about, which is, people call me Bruiser. So what's this derby name thing? That's probably something you're still curious about. So this is something that, started from the beginning, and it's been a little bit of a controversy. A lot of people have started switching back to using their real birth names when they're playing, but it was just sort of more an homage to the old school roller derby. So while it is real, none of it is staged, we still sort of take on these monikers as a fun way to do so. And so some people, as I said, are moving away from it. But here I do have a short video in which one of the skaters talks a little bit about how she came up with her name, and just a few other skaters talking about some of their experiences.
Help me introduce the 2013 Ohio Roller Girls!
So we're fighting against kind of a long history of roller derby being a lot like professional wrestling, where, it was really campy, there was a lot of drama,
We're going to have a fast-paced, hard-hitting, estrogen-fueled awesomeness!
And now, it's a real sport, so you don't have like the bank track, you don't have crazy stuff going on, you don't have fights anymore.
Ohio really making a statement in this triple.
The key is each team's on offense and defense at the same time. It's the only sport that's the case. So we're trying to help our jammer score while trying to stop theirs, and the other team's doing the same thing.
5-point pass, 101 points for the Smacktivist.
It's our first time. We don't know the rules. We don't understand the game, but everyone looks like they're having a really good time. We've never let ignorance stop us from enjoying ourselves.
My derby name is Bernadette, and I got that name from a friend who was really into comic books and said that was a villain in comic books, and that seemed like a good name for me. I'm fiery. My number is 451, Fahrenheit 451 degrees. So I think that people like the idea of having an alter ego and having something that separates them from their regular daily life. And so it's a nice way to use your creativity, and you can't duplicate anyone else's names. So we have great names like Avatar, Big Rig, who's probably 80 pounds soaking wet. I think people take a little bit of what is part of their personality and add it into a derby name.
I'm a professor at OSU, so some people find that rather shocking.
And here comes Pele's Melee moving 3 blockers for Ohio as Avatar and Bernadette trying to hold the fort.
It's just like anything. A lot of us are kind of very intensive in our day jobs because it takes a lot of commitment and it takes a lot of drive and it takes, really focusing on something. So a lot of us do have, full-time, very intensive jobs, and all we do is work in derby. It's a very rule-bound sport. You have to play safely. You have to be committed to it. I mean, we practice 4 times a week, so it's really intense and it's really hardcore.
We always talk about the athleticism and the competition. It's absolutely a competition, and we love it. It's full contact, and people love to hear that. And we get a lot of, oh, can you throw elbows and all that stuff. And we say it's very regulated. It's all sport, it's all real, and it's a great time.
All right, so that gave you a little bit of a taste of what it might actually look like to be at a game. So this is actually a picture of us at championships. So we did in 2013 meet a major goal that we had, which was to make it to the World Championship competition. The top 12 teams get to go, single elimination in the first round, which we actually successfully won our first game, which was great. I actually fouled out of that game, so I was not happy about that. But that was the first time I've ever fouled out. And then the next game we did lose, but we lost to the eventual champions that year, who had also been 7-time champions. So it wasn't too upsetting, but we have not been back since, so hopefully we'll be able to get back there. But we have maintained a spot in Division I for pretty much the entire time that we've been a league. So our next game is Saturday, June 11th, and we, as Mike mentioned, we do play at the Ohio Expo Center, so that's on the fairgrounds right on 17th Avenue. We're playing a team out of Rochester, New York. They're called Rock City. And we do have tickets available on our website if you're interested. I do have some hard copy tickets with me, but you can look and there's packages. So I think you got to hear a little bit about this, and so you'll know what you're doing if you go and actually get to see in person what it looks like. So now I will stop talking, because I've talked for a long time, and take any questions that people have.
What is the season?
So playoffs usually take place around September. So sometimes the Division I might start late August. So for instance, our first game was March this year. So the season can be a little bit rolling, but September is when playoffs happen, and then usually end of October, November is when the championships occur. Mm-hmm.
Why not use inline skates?
Inline skates are different. It's a regulation for us, because actually inline skates would probably be easier. You can go faster on inline skates. The edging, while you think it looks more difficult because you might be able to tip over, but actually you have more give on those kinds of edges. So I think it's just more of that was traditionally how the game was played, and I think people had thought about it. Some of our referees wear inline skates, but it is prohibited on the track in the game. Yes, all the way in the back.
Why is it an all-women's sport, and why aren't there co-ed leagues or men leagues?
There are men leagues. There are some men leagues that have popped up, and there are some co-ed games. The Women's Flat Track Derby Association, there are a lot of competitive men's leagues actually that have cropped up over the last few years. So they're a little bit behind us as far as where they've gone, but the WFTDA has sort of taken them under their wing now to also incorporate them into. So there are some people who play co-ed games, but there isn't any type of ranking system to for them to become competitive. It's more just kind of pick up fun games that people will play too. But yeah, I mean, that's traditionally, there were a lot of co-ed teams that played. Yes?
Who's your biggest rival?
Our biggest rival, it might be Arch Rival, which is a team out of St. Louis. So we've played them a number of times, and it's kind of funny, there's a skater that skates with them who played there first, moved to Columbus, played with us for a number of years, then moved back. So it's a friendly rivalry, but we've actually knocked them out of competition in playoffs several times in a row. So they sort of held that against us a little bit. We still like each other, but we've had kind of a pretty good rivalry going with each other over the years.
Yeah. Can the blockers knock the jammer down or knock her out of bounds?
Absolutely.
You have to get up and catch up.
That is, often a goal, doing that. I mean, sometimes it's more advantageous to just try to slow them down and hold them in. But yes, if you can knock them out of bounds, that's something that if you come watch a game, you'll notice. You have to, in order to stay in play, you have to stay 10 feet from each other, because otherwise somebody can just skate around. Because if I knock someone out of bounds, they have to come in behind me. Otherwise, they'll get a penalty. So that is a strategic advantage, because you can knock them out, and then sometimes you'll see skaters skate 10 feet, so they can string them out 40 feet behind, thus slowing them down. Plus, sometimes just if you get a big hit, it can be really soul-crushing to your spirit. So that can also be a strategic advantage. to kind of mess with the heads of your opponent. Yes, over there.
There are a lot of injuries, like you hurt your shoulder, you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, there are injuries. I separated my shoulder pretty good, and I was kind of like you think about when people drive in football. I was trying to drive my shoulder through someone's hip, and the hip won in that battle. So, so yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, sometimes it's ankles. Concussions is still a concern for us as well. We're really careful about trying to keep an eye on those things. I think every single one of us is going to probably have some kind of knee problems. So there are different injuries, whether they be broken bones, strains, sprains, surgeries, lots of different things. So yes, they do happen. All the way in the back.
I think it might, in following up on his question, it might help to really visualize how this works. Could you be the blocker and this fellow on your left got a jammer? and he's trying to get off the stage that way.
Okay. How's your insurance? Is it Mike trying to get more customers? Is that what's happening here?
You could demo a soul-crushing...
I'll consider it. Right here.
How long do the matches last?
They're 60 minutes, 2 halves of 30 minutes.
Would it be accurate to say that the main difference between this and the old roller derby is the slower pace because of the flat track versus the bank track?
I mean, the bank track is the biggest difference, and the fact that it's not staged. Yeah, the physics are different on a flat track. So I haven't actually skated on a bank track, but I've heard it's very different the way the speed is. Honestly, when we first started playing, it moved a lot quicker. As we sort of got better, people realized it's a strategic advantage to keep things slow, because the slower we're going, the more times my jammer can come around and score points, right? So a lot of times it's evolved into much more of a kind of almost like a rugby scrum where everybody's pushed together just trying to hold their space and not let anybody through. Before, it used to be a little bit more faster paced, more hits like that because of people going faster, but it sort of has evolved because of the strategy behind that.
How many on your team, and how often do you rotate players out, in
Sure.
and out?
So on the bench, there's permitted to be 14 players. So there's 5 on the track at one time. One of those is the jammer. Some teams, it really depends how we usually cycle through different lines of blockers. So maybe every jam or every 2 jams will switch some of them out. And then you have to make adjustments if somebody's in the box also. But the jammers pretty much switch every jam. There's a rare occasion where they might keep one on for 2, but that's only if maybe there's like a long timeout where they give them a rest or something like that, because it's pretty exhausting.
What's the minimum age?
We take 18 and up in our league. There are junior leagues, as I said. When I first started, we used to take 21 and up, and then we switched it to 19 and then moved down to 18, because part of the reason we moved back to 18 is because there are junior leagues, so there are girls aging out of the juniors without anywhere to go. We wanted to make sure they had a place where they could come after junior competition.
How old is your oldest player, if you happen to know? 40s?
Yeah, we have some in their, I don't think we have any, probably mid to late 40s, I would say. I'm trying to think. I mean, we definitely have a number in our 40s. We've had maybe one person over the years, probably in their 50s, but mostly 40s is about the oldest. But there's also a rec league, so, if you're interested. Thank you.
This is a donation to the Rotary Foundation made on your
that's
behalf.
awesome. Thank you so much.
As a token of our appreciation for you coming. We're going to adjourn, be Rotarians all week long.